Hey guys, welcome. We are at Broward Blueprint episode 9, where you have a special episode today. We're here with Yoni ANIJAR. He's running for District 100, state representative. We're going to talk about state issues, very exciting stuff. And actually, we have my co-host Audrey Fessick, Pompano Beach Commissioner Extraordinaire, who's also running for re-election in November. Let's start the podcast by Yoni. Tell us your pitch, your 2-minute pitch.
I would be remiss if I didn't even acknowledge how smooth an intro that was.
Well, thank you.
I'm telling you. So I'm running for District 100, which is one of the only Republican districts in all of Broward County. So it covers from Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, up to Lighthouse Point, and part of Deerfield Beach. So it's really a coastal district. Like I said, there's 11 districts in Broward County. There's only one Republican one that's been consistent. So it's incredibly important to make sure that we retain it and that you have like a strong, zealous, conservative advocate looking out for the interests of people there in Tallahassee. And so, I grew up in Broward. I was born and raised. I'm a Broward kid through and through.
Hollywood, right?
Hollywood.
Yeah.
We'll know so much about
Hollywood Beach. We did an advanced call.
Yeah. I was born in Hollywood. Went to public school in Broward from Hollywood Hills Elementary up to South Broward High School. Then went to UF for undergrad and then GW for law school. Worked at a firm in New York for a few years and then started my own firm. Worked in-house for a little bit, started my own firm. And so I mostly do corporate transactions for tech companies, some individuals, some family offices. And then in addition to that, I serve as a captain and judge advocate in the U.S. Army. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years. So I really saw this race as like a good extension of the type of service I've been doing and an opportunity to kind of give back to the community that's given me and my family so much.
Well, what we like about you is you're a young candidate. We really
emphasize how young.
Well, he's 34. He's about to turn 35, but
it doesn't feel young. But
we like the energy, and we like that he's an Army Reserve person. I mean, you could do more push-ups and pull-ups than any candidate in November. 100%, right? That's
without a question. if it was just determining on pull-ups, running,
right,
done.
Now, Yanni,
done.
One of the things I'm real passionate about is supporting our small business ecosystem here in Broward County.
Yeah.
And you told me you were working with some people on Hollywood Beach with transactions. And let's just dive into the small businesses and how we can support them. And then we'll let Audrey also tell us how Pompano, what they're doing to support their ecosystem of small business. Because in my opinion, the small businesses add value. And I think when the big migration happened in 2020, the reason Palm Beach and Miami were so successful was because they had built this incredible ecosystem of restaurants and services and yoga studios. And then Broward County was kind of behind.
Yeah.
So how, and I told you too, I think the county kind of drops the ball. How would you as our state rep help us to help these small businesses? Because, corporations have been getting help, but small businesses, I believe, especially in Broward, have been left behind.
Yeah. No, first of all, you're exactly on point. Just for reference. So I grew up in retail businesses. My parents, when they came to this country about 40 years ago, they started off in the Jersey Shore. So they had seasonal businesses, t-shirt shops, souvenirs, arcade games. So my brother and I worked in there every summer of our lives up until when I started law school. My brother started medical school. And then my dad has a store in Hollywood Beach. So I grew up in retail, like it's ingrained in me. And then separate from my law firm, I have a credit card processing business. So I service a lot of small businesses, stores on the Hollywood Beach boardwalk that you and I talked about, and all along throughout the country from Virginia to California, I have stores. So I deal with small businesses on a daily basis. So one of these issues actually that I haven't seen, I've done a lot of research on it, and no one's really addressed. It's actually, I heard it for the first time. I went to the East Broward Republican Club meeting, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there was a retailer who owns a small boutique. He was the first person that came up to this. So right now, a lot of businesses, gets to your question. A lot of businesses in Florida in 2018, there was a federal court that struck down a law that precluded businesses from passing on surcharging processing fees to customers. So usually that fee is about 3.5%. If you do it with me, it's a lot cheaper, but so it's about 3 to 3.5%.
Right.
And so federal law struck it, and then businesses started doing that as a way to kind of offset some of their costs.
Right.
The thing is, and it's a hidden tax because businesses actually pay sales tax on that revenue, but it's not revenue to the business.
Right.
Because they're essentially, if you have $100 transaction, right? You had 3% processing fee. That 3% goes to the processor, right? That's not really revenue, but they're paying sales tax on that 3%.
Okay.
So just to I did a little bit of digging, and this is what I was kind of teasing yesterday, but in our conversation, but So there's about 900 billion to $1 trillion of transactions that happen in Florida every year. Right. And then about 600 to 700 are credit cards.
Right.
Of the 700, about 200 to 300 are businesses that pass on the surcharging. Right. So about $200-300 billion of transactions where the merchants pass on the surcharging.
Right.
So you think about this, 3% is about 60 to 70 billion dollars, right? Of total like revenue from those processing fee. Then you're paying 7% on that amount. So you're talking about between $400 and $500 million a year that businesses are paying in sales tax on revenue that they're not on income that's not even income.
Wow. Okay.
Because they're passing on that fee, right? So that's just, but they're still paying a tax on it. So for small businesses, if you make $1 million a year, it's maybe a couple grand, $4,000 or $5,000. For larger businesses, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And again, you're talking about $500 million that they're paying on revenue, and it's a hidden tax that adds up a lot. So one of the ideas I'd like to pursue, and kind of goes exactly to the heart of your question about how can I help small businesses, I'd like to provide like an exemption on that, but not just a blanket exemption with no strings attached. I think one of the ways you do it, you let the businesses earn it. So with those savings, you have to take a part of that savings and either put it towards an apprenticeship program, or you have to show, we could have benchmarks where the businesses have to either expand to increase their salaries for some of their employees, demonstrate that they've brought on additional work staff, or they can create an apprenticeship or contribute to an apprenticeship program that's an existing one and show that they made that contribution. So maybe they're not going to pocket all of that money, but at least they pocket more than they would beforehand before this. So I think that's it's not nothing. I'm talking about $500 million. For bigger businesses that make a couple $1 million a year, it'll add up significantly. And I think one other thing, not to filibuster, I want to hear Audrey actually. But the other thing, so that's a small thing that has not been addressed. And I would like to also codify the exemption. So right now we're dealing with a memorandum from Attorney General Moody on the whole surcharging thing as a result of that federal case back in 2018, 2019. So I want to put that into law so it's not tenuous. So at least there's some security for businesses. And then the other thing I want to do, so today is April 30th. Tomorrow, I don't know if you guys own an LLC. Okay. You've been getting these pesky emails. Yeah. Okay. So you have to do a renewal for your LLC, right? Okay. So I'll tell you a fun fact. So to renew your LLC, it's about $135. However, Florida leads the nation as the highest penalty in the country. Higher than California, higher than New York. So if you miss that deadline on May 1st, there's a $400 penalty that's imposed on you. For reference, Georgia, Alabama, it's about $25, $50.
Wow. Okay.
So it's $400 that if you miss it and they make a point to say by 12/01 on May 1st, if the fee isn't received, there's a $400 penalty. $400, it seems like overly punitive. And especially you have a lot of LLCs that are just holding companies. They're not making any revenue. You could have a tiered system where maybe it's $50 for the first 3 months that it's late. Or for small businesses, for first-time businesses, how about just an exemption across the board, right? We're like, okay, look, most businesses fail after the first year, so why impose more of a barrier? Now, these are small things, but they add up over time. And I think it would it'd be consistent with Florida's ethos of being small business friendly and doing, as much as you can to kind of support and, create a hospitable environment for businesses to come down to Florida, which is ultimately what we want.
Well, also, we were talking about the cities, being involved, right? Audrey, what about Pompano? What's going on? How do you guys support Pompano? Do you offer grants? I know you offer marketing support for your business. I see them on social media constantly, which is great.
We do have some grant programs available with our CRA. We have some, basically both from a marketing standpoint, we have a actually build out program as well. But there's something else that has come up recently, in which we're working on our McNabb Bridge renovation. And there's a lot of businesses along McNabb Road that are impacted by the bridge closure and the road closure. And so I think we as a city could potentially do a little bit more if we know we're going to have some structured road projects that are going to affect local businesses. That's something that I'd like to see a little bit more of. And I think we can work towards that. I love the idea about the filing fees for LLCs, because there's a lot of real estate holdings that you put in an LLC. And so, and then $135, that's like, cost of doing business, especially if you're actually not really doing business, but you're doing it for legality's sake and to stay legal in the state of Florida. The $400 fee is crazy. The other thing is the predatory stuff.
Right.
It feels like you get emails all the time.
Well, I did notice in Pompano when I visited you, when I went to your party, that there was you're
always welcome.
Yeah. All the shops were there were not a lot of empty storefronts, and in Hollywood, it's completely, especially downtown, exact opposite situation. I've been watching the meetings in Hollywood, Yoni, and a big problem is permit approval. There's some permits that have been for 2 to 3 years. Now, I kind of thought this one idea of like maybe forcing, like the state intervening when cities don't do a good job of providing permits to businesses, that if it's not approved within like 6 months to a year, the state could approve it.
For sure.
Kind of force their hand. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was reading recently that about 30% of the costs associated with most new developments, 30% of that is related to the processing time for permits. Mm-hmm. It's just the amount of like red tape that you have to go through to actually secure these permits, and just the regulatory rigmarole that you have to go through. Yeah, I think definitely to the extent, look, I think Blaze and Gala has been doing a really good job, and I want to do everything I can to give legislative teeth to the DOJ efforts and make sure that every dollar of waste, fraud, and abuse is actually absorbed or given back to taxpayers in one form or another, whether it's property tax relief or reductions in insurance. But yeah, I mean, look, there's been a very kind of sensitive issue on the whole like live local stuff. And I get it about like local control for sure. But for speaking frankly, as like Republicans that are here, we live in a Republican state, but Broward is a very Democratic county, and politics for the most part is local, right? So people are not going to be affected as much from their senators or congressmen as they are from their commissioners, from their mayors, and what happens in Tallahassee. Right. So it's kind of a weird. I tell people all the time, even friends from out of state, like, oh yeah, I'm running in Florida. It's like, oh, it must be like a cakewalk for the Republicans. I'm like, no, dude, it's like all Democrats. So you have to take that into reality. And you saw that in 2020, right? Where all of the overly intrusive kind of policies on COVID, they were being led by Democratic mayors, Democratic city commissions. So I think there needs to be a balance. And to the extent that, local governments kind of overstep, I think.
Or drop the ball.
Or drop, I mean, for sure. And, or they're not leading, right? Audrey, you and I talked about this the other day. Like,
well, what about Pompano? What's the permit for small businesses
Permits I've been hearing they take some time.
How long?
Gosh, I've heard.
Do you have a concierge service for them? Like,
we do have. So like, I know that when we've had for building permits, like we've had you can expedite permits. So, permit expediter. Right. And I guess I've never really paid attention because we've done our driveway paving I was never in a, oh, sure, whenever they come out, that's fine. Right. But for my neighbors that are building projects, they've said that they've struggled with some timing. Okay. And, I think anything can be improved.
But small businesses should be priority, I think, no?
They should be residential. They should be. It shouldn't take so long for certain things. And I've heard, but sometimes there's backlog and there needs to be more staffing. It ultimately comes down to management style and what we're choosing to do there, I think. Right. But you were speaking a little bit about like how, from a state level to local level. And that was one of the things that I really feel strongly about, making sure people know how much their day-to-day life is actually impacted by their local government. So it's not just the small businesses also, but but the small businesses are often owners in the same city. Right. So when we're talking about some of these developments, and we actually have a lot of empty storefronts in Pompano. I know that not by the beach so much because the CRA did fill up a good amount of those. Right. In the development, but we do actually have a lot of empty storefronts, and even in our CRA areas that we can do a lot better. So I'd like to see even priority placed on small business
for sure
as part of a statewide support, rather than incentives for developers who just chuck in. They get a big building and then they just chuck in, like 600 square feet, and they call it a mixed use building, right? And it's not, right? And then it's just very high ticket.
A small smoothie place is part of the apartment.
Right. And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I told 100%. And just to your point, well, go ahead. Well,
No, go ahead.
No, just to your point about like the whole people not realizing the dynamics of like I was speaking, it kind of hit me firsthand. My parents, both my parents, they immigrated here, and my parents have been naturalized citizens for over 40 years, right? My dad has never voted before. up until 2020 was the first election he voted for. Him, he's been working in his stores every day for 40 years.
Right.
Like Monday through Sunday, nonstop.
Right.
Politics became really real during COVID because all of a sudden now he has his buddies in New York and California. Who's this Newsom guy? Who's this Cuomo? Who's DeSantis? And I guarantee you, ask most of my dad's friends, they wouldn't be able to name you a governor. Not a knock on them. It's just not their forte. But I name you a governor of Florida before DeSantis, right? Because at that point, politics doesn't really matter to you until it does, right?
Right.
And until it hits you. And then they're like, oh, wait, this is what's going on. So he's letting my business being open.
Right.
And another person is, you have stores that are going out of business. And we were really close. Like, I don't think people really appreciate how close this was in 2018. By like a third of a percent, I think it was. Maybe like 20 or 30,000 votes that Andrew Gillum.
Yes.
And
5,000.
Yeah, maybe even less. Yeah.
Really a small amount.
I can't even imagine the trajectory of what Florida would be like if you had, his leadership for those 4 years, especially during such a tumultuous time like COVID.
Right.
So to that point, like people's eyes were kind of opening up.
Right.
And like, oh wow, I have to make sure to vote. And then, that continued. And then, for my parents are Israeli immigrants. For them, the Jewish community after October 7th, it was even more of a reason to get involved. I was registering people to vote in 2020. They were registering their friends in 2020 and 2024.
Right.
So like there was a whole new energized population. But yeah, I don't think really, and I think a lot of small businesses saw that during COVID, and that's what they appreciate. And look, I've been knocking on doors for the last year and a half. I just shout out for myself over here, Will, and qualified by petition.
I know.
Yeah, so
very impressive.
I was waiting for you to bring it up. I texted you, so I've been knocking on doors, collecting these petitions. I've heard it from, mostly Republicans. I've got signatures for, but I had a lot of Democrats and MPAs that also signed, and they were like, "Listen, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I voted for DeSantis," and a huge swath of them. And I'm talking about areas like Lauderdale by the Sea and Fort Lauderdale and Pompano. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Because I'm like a reasonable person and they're not overly partisan, and they can kind of acknowledge a win. And they're like, look, there's a reason why I'm here, right? There's a reason why I'm here and not in California. At the end of the day, the biggest indication, the biggest endorsement you have is how people move with their feet, right? So that's what makes Florida kind of unique. So I think people really need to understand, appreciate that. Yes, you go down ballot, who you're voting for governor, you're voting for president, but really the down ballot stuff that people usually Christmas tree and, whatever, and they go by the name they recognize, which if that suits my interest, that's perfectly fine. But, but if to the extent that they could take, it should almost be the opposite way. You should have the down ballot races starting off at the top of the ballot. And then, the governor and president, I don't want any hate from Trump or Byron Donalds, but I'm saying because that way it incentivizes people to actually know, okay, who's my water commissioner, or for the, city commissioner, mayor, whatever, or school board. Those are huge things that those decisions will affect you, what the curriculum your kids are going to get on a day-to-day basis, what are the property taxes that people are going to impose, how that money is going to get spent, the new developments. I had people, and I had to explain it to them. They're like, oh, you're running for state house. That's great. Can you help address there needs to be a stop sign and a speed bump here. And I'm like, look, it's a little bit outside my purview because these are more of a local issue, but a state rep can definitely leverage that, has a bully pulpit to be able to kind of leverage the relationships on the local level. And look, at the end of the day, we end up getting money. Hopefully, God willing, I have an opportunity to work with Audrey on figuring out okay, how do we bring money from Tallahassee to the local? But there's a give and take, right? Listen, you need to address some of these concerns from constituents. That's outside of my purview, but you could put pressure, and vice versa. She puts pressure on me to hey, Yoni, make sure you get this done.
Well, a lot of times, and this is one of the things that I did speak with you about too, is that is an issue. We have, in South Florida, there's city streets, there's county streets, and there's state streets, and they just sort of all kind of, and the right of ways that are shared. And so we have all this crazy sort of. And then we have, let's not forget the Army Corps of Engineers, because we're so close to the water, and we have the marine industry. So there's a lot of checklists between DEP. So there's a lot of state organizations sometimes that to touch even a crosswalk requires or to pave, we have North Riverside Drive, which has been a paving project that's, it's going to take a lot of work. It's not just a paving project. It's utility work. It's pipes. It's pump station. It's because it's next to the Intracoastal. So, and that would require and has required, Army Corps of Engineers and FDOT and all of the FDP and all of those underlying things. So that has been actually a conversation that we've already had, as a city with Senator Pizzo and Representative Chip LaMarca. So we all got on a phone call with a resident and our city and to try to help move this forward. And it is nice to have those relationships where you can get on a Zoom call and joke around about, and Senator Pizzo, to his credit, I will give him this. He said he hung up. He says, I know so-and-so over there, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give him a call after we're done here. And I'm going to handle this. And so the resident said, oh, do you want me to sit in on the call with you? And he said, oh, no. This is going to be a phone call. Right. He goes, I'm Jersey. He goes, I'm from Jersey. I'm going to be a little Jersey. I'm going to bring my Jersey into this. So when you said the Jersey part, I thought that was good. But no, that is the relationship, right? So when we can't solve something, it's important to have leaders that, you go up the chain, right? Like anything else, you go up the chain. So, all right, what's the next level? How do I make this move? How do I get this solved?
It's an interesting thing. I think for the longest time, you've seen this kind of change in the last, say maybe 60, 70 years in this country. For the most part, like the 50s, 40s,
right.
If you had a problem, the first thing you did is that you went either to your church, your local, synagogue, whatever the case is, community center, to kind of address it. Then you'd move on to the city level, then maybe to the state, and then eventually to the federal, right? Mm-hmm. But now it's kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And there's something. Well, first, even before the church, you go to your community, your neighbors. Actually, that's the first line of defense, right?
Right.
Your neighbors, then church, religious institutions, and then kind of work your way up. But it's kind of inverted, right? And now it's getting to a point where, people don't even know what a state house. How many times I have to explain to people, like, okay, what are you running for? You're running, especially again, I'm dealing with a lot of immigrants, family members, like, Yoni's running for Congress. Wow. Yeah, okay. Not Congress. No, Senator. Yoni's running. I'm like, no, that's not. It's State House. And then you have DC with Tallahassee, right? But yeah, and I think just getting people more familiarity with how important jobs like commission is, and making them appreciate it will open their eyes for sure. That's
one of the things so it's good that you're out there, obviously walking and talking to people, because that was the best thing that I ever did. And I think since then, keeping that line of communication open with residents has been also really great in terms of, people who never paid attention to local politics wouldn't have even been able to tell you, like, commissioner, what is that? Is that a fantasy football thing? Like, they weren't really paying attention. They're like, I vote for president, or I donate to this, or I donate to that, like governor, president, and then in the Senate, like senators on a national level. And they really weren't paying attention. And it usually just stuck to like the core, governor, president, and then they sort of checked out.
Right.
And not for anything, but being able to have the connection point, I think, where people realize everything that happens on a national level starts at this granular level. And so the stuff that impacts us most and the stuff that's the easiest sometimes to fix is the stuff that's in your own neighborhood. So it is a good opportunity. And I am so excited that we've had so many people pay attention now. I feel like there has been a shift, maybe even in the past, again, since COVID, but even more so, there's been a shift where residents have really decided to start to take back some control. And I think that's what we've seen since COVID, seeing what happened in other areas of the country, and then seeing how we were doing here, the shift of what people's perceptions of, hey, I think we can do better between technology, between what we choose to do and how we want our quality of life to be. And that means people are paying attention, and more than ever before. Netflix is great, but our city commission our city commission meetings have actually reached, I think, record highs for the city of Pompano.
Well, I think there's a whole new era of the past couple of years. I started Broward Blueprint because I was just kind of fed up with, I felt like Broward County was the stepchild left behind Miami and Palm Beach. And that's why I made it my passion to promote people like you and Audrey, who I believe are capable of creating substantial change in Broward County for the better. And I think that we need leaders, because we've had the status quo for too long. I mean, when you drive your car and you cross into Palm Beach County, it immediately looks nicer.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, and And our taxes in Broward County have gone up. And then DeSantis pointed that out through Doge, have gone up so much. Yet the park in my neighborhood, North Beach Park, it looks horrible.
45%.
Yeah.
Taxes have gone up. Property taxes have gone up 45% over the last 6 years.
Right.
But the population only grown about 6%.
Yeah.
So when you really just like let that absorb for a minute,
yeah.
went up 45%, but our population only increased 6%. So where's that going towards?
Right.
Right. Like what is that being spent towards?
Right.
And it should infuriate everyone. Right. Yeah. Like I'm a business owner. Mm-hmm. I know I check my bank accounts every day. Right. I know
multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Right.
I try not to be too obsessive, but I'm saying I know where everything goes. Right. And for me, when I find out, like, for instance, I have like a subscription that's been, charging me whatever it is, 20, it's more like, I feel like violated. I'm like, how did I not, well, what did I click on? What did this? And it's like, because I know what it takes to make $1,000, $5,000. I respect money in that way. Like I don't think people, especially on Audrey, with the exception of Audrey, obviously, but on the local level, people don't, because it's not their money. Right. Yeah. It's not really their money. So that's why, and you see this kind of like revolving circle with a lot of, like teacher unions with politicians, and they're, promising certain stuff. Politicians will promise whatever sort of increases they want. And then the unions then give money in the form of donations to their politicians. And it's a never ending cycle. And you think about it, like you have public, I'm all for unions 100%, but like you have private sector unions, there's skin in the game, right? Where you have a CEO owns a company, and the union leader, they're both sitting down, and there's a give and take because they have, it's their money. It's the business's money who's actually making the concession. Right. But when you think about it from the opposite, right? And a lot of times, again, there are great public sector unions like, police and fire for sure. But there are ones that I'm sure Audrey, maybe offline or online, but we could talk about it. But there are a lot where they'll make concessions. You have these politicians who will make concessions. And they're doing it with conceding on who? It's not they're taking money out of their wallet using taxpayer money. And then they give them what they want. And then when election cycle comes around, those unions then give them donations to the campaigns. And it's just it's a cycle that continues, and it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think people need to be more aware of it for sure.
Well, I think we need people in the state that will hold people accountable locally here, and try and push for change, like the permits with the small businesses, or all these kind of issues that affect us on a regular basis. And that you have the opportunity to create laws in Tallahassee to address these issues for us, or to put pressure on our local leaders to do the right thing.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing more regulations. I know that the CRA bill has been lobbied against many, 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 many times over the past many, many years. And it always seems to just fall short. But it's not necessarily that it has to kill a CRA, because I think that's the thing. It's always seems like it's always an all or nothing, right? It's always like, and I think what people fail to realize is that there's CRAs that do really great work in other.
I haven't yet to see one, Audrey.
Well, no, who? I will. So actually, in other states, I will say, like I've seen some. So Greenville, South Carolina, I was looking into some of the programs they have. I'm not saying that they're perfect either, right? Because I haven't looked that far into things, but some of the things that they have done is retain the actual quality and character of a neighborhood. Right. Okay. And then provide for home ownership through community land trusts. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of where I say, all right, the money's not going into engineering, architectural designs, consultants to tell us what we should be doing with the space, parking consultants. It's going straight back to people and fixing up the streetscapes and the neighborhoods, and then allowing people at a discount to be able to purchase and have home ownership and pride of ownership and an investment. Even though with land trust, there's not like a gigantic profit, so it keeps a neighborhood full of people who want to live in that neighborhood and who can afford it. Right. So it's workforce housing stuff.
You do it. I'm going to give you a shout out. Like your videos that you do, those AI where you're like before and after on like touch ups and stuff. Yeah. The thing is, I've walked, some of those businesses are ones that have my machines in them, but like I walk by it and you just become like kind of numb to it. That like, oh yeah, I guess
it's the way it looks.
That's the way it looks. You don't think twice about it, but it affects your mood. There's a reason why, like, say that someone has the blues, right? Or whatever. Because usually when it's gloomy outside, it affects your emotional state. In the same way that you have bad architecture, you have like really drab. Last year 2 years ago, I was in Hungary, and you'll see these like gorgeous cathedrals, and then right across from it is like kind of a remnant of the USSR, and you have these like really like eyesores of buildings right across from this gorgeous like Gothic cathedral.
Right.
And you look at it and you're like, oh God, it's so and then you look at the cathedral, you're like, wow, it's amazing. And just like, it makes you feel better too. And you take more pride. You're less like, I guarantee I haven't seen people litter there, right? Because they take pride in it. Yeah, they don't. Because you're like, oh wow, this is actually something beautiful, right? This is something that I should want to take care of. Inherently, I feel like it's just people that you see something very aesthetically beautiful, you're less likely to kind of abuse it, right? But you see something that's kind of commercial looking and kind of clay, moldy, whatever. Whatever. You know, you don't think twice about it.
Broken window theory.
Yeah.